Then and now. Oops, sorry. Okay, I'm a computer dummy. Lisa's the smart one in the crowd. But anyway, hi everyone. Good to see your faces. And hopefully I may see some of you when we go to get down to the see the skunk cabbage. Anyway, our title is Then and Now. I'm going to deal with the then because I'm one of those old folks that's been around the block a bit. And as Bob said, I'm suffering from long Lyme and my memory is not the best. So if I have a little brain fog, bear with me. So anyway, yeah, I was wondering where to start. And I thought while I go back, I've been interested in flowers for a long while. And looking back, I can remember this will be 85 years ago. And I was 4 years old. So you know how old I'm going to be next Monday. Anyway, you can do the math. And anyway, the first thing I remember in the spring was knowing where the violets bloomed over behind our burn. And back then, I was allowed to wander and roam around the first our property, and then I'd go further into the woods and down to the beach and the pond. And I just got to learn every natural place around and loved it. And but then after high school, I got married and had 4 kids. This gal beside me was the first one. And the first word she spoke beside Mama and Dada was foul. And that was when I put a flower in front of her and I said, "This is a flower." And she said, "Foul." You didn't know I was going to do that, did you, Lisa? Had to have a little surprise here for her. So anyway, it went on after my family was grown up a little bit, not a whole lot. But anyway, we bought a camp. It was a wilderness camp, which is, well, it became part of the Tobiatic Wilderness Committee. We had to move our camp. It was on a leased crown lot. And but that was a whole new habitat for me. It was, you know, mature forest and discovered there were 2 bogs, Isles Bog and Marshall's Bog. So that was a brand new habitat for me. So I spent quite a bit of time there. And about mid 70s, I had an hour-long radio show in CKDY Digby. It was called Plant Talk. And it was mostly about gardens, garden plants, house plants, but I'd get a few little questions about wildflowers and so on. And so that set me up. So I was doing quite a few presentations for garden clubs. And when someone asked me, one garden club asked me to do a show on wildflowers. So I thought, well, where do I start? So I got in touch with the Nova Scotia Museum, and Alec Wilson was there as the curator at the herbarium. So he sent me two books. This one, The Rare Vascular Plants of Nova Scotia, and that was Paul Keddy. Some people might remember Paul. I think he taught at St. Mary's, maybe. Anyway, that one and the oh, Lisa, what's happened here? There we are. That's the inside of that. And you can see there's a few stains on it. It got wet a couple of times. But during the winter, I took this book and my Flora of Nova Scotia and all these rare plants. I made a note in my Flora that that particular plant was rare. So when I was out in the woods with my Flora, I would know if I came across the plant that was rare, and then I'd make note of it. And that way, I had a great life just looking for rare plants and actually finding them and submitting specimens to both the herbarium at Acadia and the Nova Scotia Museum. So it was a fun time, and I like to feel that I contributed to the knowledge. And this is the centerfold of the Nova Scotia Forest, I think it was called. It was a little publication put out by DNR. And this centerfold was also included with the mailing from Alex. And these were the rare plants then. Wild leek I found. The red root I saw somebody else found that. Hepaticus I found on the North Mountain. Um, I can't see that. Maybe you guys can't either. But golden crest, and anyway, so when I either recognized them when I saw them or I sought them out. And over the next, what, 20 years or so, I had a whale of a time and contributed a bit to the flora. And that's my old Flora. I had to have it rebound because I was so hard on it. And one day when I was at the museum, Alex looked at my old Flora that I had, and he said, "You know, Ginny," he says, "that's not going to last you until the new Flora comes out." So when I left the museum that day, he had a brand new copy of the Flora for me as thanks for bringing in all those specimens. And then later on, he also gave me this one. I asked about if I could buy it. How much was it? And he said $70. And I says, "Oops, that's a little bit out of my league. I better not go for that." But when I left the museum that day, he had these two copies in a bag for me. I sort of tear up because he was special. And then, yes, Lisa got Kleenex. I'm an old teary-eyed lady. Bear with me. So then Lisa made me a couple of plant presses so I could press my specimens. And when I see how simple it is for iNaturalists to submit their findings, this was a long way to go. But anyway, I did it and I'm glad. There was my new copy of the Flora that Alex gave me. And when the new Flora came out, I couldn't wait to get home to see if my my submissions had been recorded, and right down to the last one, they were all there, and I called them my Ginny dots because they were new dots on the distribution maps. So they didn't miss any of them. So I'm going to start with our plants down at the end of Digby Neck, and we'll go east from there. And this is the Vaccinium uliginosum, alpine whortleberry. And when I told Alec that I had, how did that go? I guess he asked me if I had seen the alpine whortleberry on Fire Island. And I said, "Well, yes." And he stopped mid-step and turned around. He said, "You did?" He said, "Wait, there's only two spots where that grows on mainland Nova Scotia." And I sort of just stumbled on it when I was leading a field trip there, and I was going along. This is this, and this is that, and I came to this, and I said, "And this is, what is this? Does anybody know what this is?" So it took me a while to find out, but anyway, I had my Vaccinium uliginosum. And this is a close-up that Lisa took when we were down at Briar last year. And it's growing up. I say it's growing up, it's stretching to get up, keep up with the encroaching shrubbery around it. And it needs a bit of a rescue, I think. Nick Hill was going to look into trying to do something about that. And this is the iNaturalist map, and there's one note down there, and then all the rest are up there in the Highlands and one out in Halifax County. I don't know if anyone's located that one recently, but it's on the records. So down on Briar, I didn't discover Primula laurentiana first. However, I'm a bit concerned. Last summer we were there, and there'd been a little grass fire where that grows out near the Western Light, and I could not find the primula. And I hope it will show up this spring when after the winter and regroup. So if anybody's down that way, have a look for it just north of the Western Light. And that one is, you'll notice it's all around the Bay of Fundy. That's like the cool water. And curly grass fern. Um, that was we found that when Ruth Newell and I did the research project on Digby Neck, and I think this Jeff's photos. Thank you, Jeff, for your good photos. We made good use of them, and yes, it was part of the research project, and then I was on Long Island. This one was collected that year, Ruth and Carol Jackert and I, and later on, I guess maybe the following year, I was in the same bog, and I collected a piece of juniper that I was a little different looking. I said, well, I'll take that home. And I got a handful of moss to keep it fresh. And when I got home, in the handful of moss was a little curly grass fern. And I sent that into the museum, and there it was, 19th of August, 2002. So that was one little fellow that didn't stay in the bog. So Lisa and I were down on Digby Neck, and no, Long Island, Boar's Head, and we came across the purple rattlesnake root. And used to be Pre-Nancy's racemosa, but now it's Nablus. They keep on changing the names. I'll know nothing about our Nova Scotia plants. And there's my page in my well-worn Flora, where we found it, 18th of July, 22, Boar's Head Lighthouse. And there's the locations with the INAT map. And Golden Crest, La Viola Aurea, got to know this one really well. Jeff, you got the best pictures of it. But we studied that for a full summer and into the next spring to determine where the water flowed, because there was a little discrepancy there on what watershed they existed in. So we got that settled, and it was great working with Ruth Newell. And there's a report, the 97-98, and this report has been used by several people in the scientific community. We just had 3 copies made, I think, one for the museum, because they had provided the funding for the research, and one for Ruth and one for me. And so we've shared this with several people in the scientific community, and so I think the museum funds were well spent that summer. And during that year, and I was looking for more La Viola, golden crest, I came across this, and I think this is probably my most important find. It was Eastern Mountain Avens, which up until that point was only known in Nova Scotia from Briar Island, and never on the mainland. Well, this was the first sighting on the mainland, Nova Scotia. It was at East Ferry. So it was an island and two passages, Petite Passage and Grand Passage away, about 40 miles probably from the original site on Briar. So that was, I think, the one I'm most pleased with. And there you see where it's only in Nova Scotia, just in that little spot. Pardon me, and Lisa's going to show you where it was in New Hampshire. Okay, I'm about as dry as that hunk of rock in front of me there. Okay, rock spike moss. This was another challenge. In Flora, John Erskine had said that he had found it on a rock outcrop east of Centerville, Digby County. So in 94, Ann Mills and we checked out Shubal Mountain because that was supposed to be one of the original sites. Couldn't find a site of it there. So that was 1994. And it was not until October 2002, what's that, 8 years, before I finally found my Selaginella rupestris. And here we have a picture of it that shows the fruiting bodies. And can you highlight them? See the little yellow they're the megaspores. I don't know much about the names of parts and pieces, but anyway, a lot of you will. And this is a picture that was taken during a really dry area time.
Last summer.
And it was over, oops, I'll try, over here, some that's already died. And it's past, but then you see a little bit on the outer edge fringe here is still alive. And here's a pretty good sized clump. And during a really dry weather, this is what it does. It curls in on itself to maintain its humidity. And so anyway, that was my second best. And we'll go on from there. That's the map showing where it's found in Nova Scotia. And Lisa came up with this one. I'm not sure just where she found it, but it's a good specimen shown there. And down at the next to the last paragraph there, thought to be extirpated, but for a recent collection in the same vicinity on Digby Neck. And that occurred in October 2002. And there's the two little dots down there on Digby Neck. So now we're up on Beeman's Mountain. This is overlooking the Annapolis Basin, but still in Digby County. And Jeff, that was a great picture of the wild lake. And I found that in July, I think. There were no leaves at the time, just the blossoms. And I had no idea what it was. It was something new. So I sort of looking for leaves down at the base and sort of scratched the lower part of the stem, and I got an onion smell. Well, that gave me a bit of a lead, and went home and found it in my field guides. So that was that extended the range of the wild lake. It was only known then from up in Kings County. So that was a good little find, and I tried to get up there once a year or so for a few years, but I don't know whether my old legs will take me anymore. Hope so. And also, while I was up there, I found Dutchman's breeches, and that was another one that was known only from up the valley and in central Nova Scotia. So that was pretty neat. First time I found just leaves, and then the next year when I got there, it had already passed flowering. So I got this specimen. I didn't want to take a whole plant, so I just took a stem with the dead flowers or seed pods, whatever, and one leaf. And that was what date is that, Lisa? May 20, 1994. Yeah, that was a lovely, rich hardwood, and long, long walk to get up there, but well worth it. And while we're talking about Dutchman's breeches, I seem to have a lot of information on that. So I thought I would take you for a run through the old way of sending in a specimen and saying exactly where I found it. So 1985, that seemed to be my year to get going on things. And that is the 1985 Nova Scotia map book. And I can't remember who gave it to me, but I was given this grid so I could break down a 10-kilometer square into 1-kilometer squares. So I put that over the 10-kilometer square and could pinpoint there was the Beeman's Mountain sloping down to the Annapolis Basin. The Digby Gut is just at the top of my finger there. And so then I made the collection, and then Alec had given me these collector's field record books and carbon copies, and so I always had to keep a short little pencil that I could stuff in my pocket, and so I could make my notes. And here we have it. The date is there, the Nova Scotia map book, and 3D5 was the coordinates, and the altitude, the soil, the habitat, the whole 9 yards. So I would keep all this information maybe in my book that I carried with me, and then would fill this out when I was ready to take the specimen in. And how about the next slide there, Lisa? And here's where I filled in my notes on my flora. And close up there showed the Dutchman's breeches in my flora. And there's the let's see, we'll get her over there. Okay, there's the illustration, and there's the name Dicentra and Dicentra cucularia. I'm pronouncing it correctly. And here's the map that I had, the distribution map at that time. And here were all the dots up here and not a thing down our way. So I put my dot right there and I said, good job, Ginny. Good job. And then we're going to go from Beeman's Mountain, which I said was overlooking the Annapolis Basin, and I went out to Bear Island, which you could see from Beeman's, but I approached it from Smith's Cove. On a low tide, there's a sandbar that goes out to Bear Island, and so just on thinking for a lark, I'm going to walk out on the morning tide and stay all day and come back on the evening tide. So this is one of the specimens I picked up that day. It's not a rare plant by any means, but it reminds me of the adventure I had that day. And like I said, I was there all alone, and my main thing was to count cormorants' nests. And while I was counting the cormorants' nests, the babies were bopping up and down out of their nests, and I had my binoculars on them. And in the background, I saw a great blue heron in a tree, and I thought, I never saw a great blue heron in a tree. I explored a little further, and I discovered that there was a great blue heron colony there on the island. And so that was pretty neat. And I found a bank swallow colony there that day and lots of plants. And so I had all my field notes done and I headed back to the mainland, but the tide wasn't all the way out. So I said, okay, well, maybe I'll do a litter count. So I paced off about 100 feet and I collected litter, and there was a lot of it. And when I started back for the mainland, by golly, the tide had turned and was coming back in again. So I turned around and I said, Ginny, you're going to spend the night on the island. But then a fellow over on the mainland where I'd left my car knew the predicament I was in. So he and his dog came out and they waded out into the water to show me that I could still make it back to land. So I waded about a half an hour up to my knees in that cold water. And so I made it back. My husband said, don't you ever go back there again. And unfortunately, I haven't, but it wasn't because he told me not to. Just haven't had the opportunity. So then we come back with sweet pepperbush, back in Digby County on the mainland now, down at Bellevue Lake, and Clethra alnifolia, and it's a threatened with Sarah, and there's the close-up of it. And it was Lisa and I went there. We took her canoe and paddled out to the island, and it was a great day. And we saw the sweet pepper bush, and then I met this guy, ground leaf catbrier. Well, he met me, and I met him, and I was stuck for a fair length of time before I could make my way out of the claws of that catbrier. Anyway, I took a little specimen, and it's now sitting in the herbarium at the museum. And there's the little card. Okay, and Sean, you're taking good care of that, I trust. Anyway, then we went to where did we find the Rexia? Oh, this was we went to Lake Jolly canoeing, and at Franklin Lake, Franklin Brook, we found Rexia virginica, and I didn't know that grew anywhere near here. And later I found out it grows as far west or east as the number 8 highway. Found it out at Milford. and it's a pretty little plant. This one I didn't have to go far to find it. I was out for a walk in Deep Brook here near my home, and there was ditchy material had been deposited across my neighbor's property, and I saw this growing on it, and I said, that's different. So I brought a piece home and identified it as variegated horsetail, and lo and behold, it was rare. Well, I thought I had to find out where did that ditching come from. So I did a little sleuthing and found that it came from the 101 up near the Clementsville overpass. So Lisa and I had uh, a chance to go and collect some, and we let's see, I guess we had it declared that it was rare, and it was put on the rare plant list, and it was we had the place posted on the highway. Do not, what was it? Hand, something about hand mowing the bushes, not to take the machinery in there because this was a rare, delicate plant. Well, it turned out it wasn't delicate at all. It's survived two or three ditchings since then, and it's done nothing but multiply. And the ditching equipment, they spread it over to the ditch on the opposite side of the road where it never grew before. And so we've got more of it than we ever had before. So I think they can take that off the rare plant list. And this one was special. And thank you again, Jeff, for the picture because I was too busy looking at plants and trying to keep my feet dry when I discovered this on Niffen Brook. Now we're over in Annapolis County now, and Niffen Brook comes down through a big slate ravine and flows into the Bear River. And I had a wonderful solo trip up there, and found this and realized it was special. And later on, we did a field trip there with one of our naturalist groups, and so some of you other people may have seen this on that trip. But it was a nice one. And okay, Lisa, let's see. Okay, this is a large round-leaved orchid, and Jeff's pictures again, and we've decided that the slugs, excuse me, like this a lot. Excuse me. And a good picture of a close-up there of it. And this one helped save a stand of hardwoods on Bowater lands in Victory. I pointed it out to them, and they agreed not to cut it. So that helped that one out. And this is Hooker's orchid, and this goes back to a little story when I was taking specimens to the museum. And I had taken some in, and I asked Alec, I said, okay, what do you want me to find next? And he thought for a minute. He said, well, how about a Hooker's orchid? I said, okay, I'll keep my eye out. So I came upon Hooker's orchids, but there were only 7 or 8. Well, my rule was if there's only 10, at least 10, you might take one. But if there's less than 10, you don't take one. But I was thinking, well, I sort of promised Alex, thank you, Lisa. I was looking at Sean on my screen here. Anyway, I took a specimen and I felt guilty for a long while. But then the next time I was in that area, 2 or 3 years later, they bulldozed the whole works away. So then I didn't feel guilty anymore. I was glad that I'd saved one. So then moving from that area over to the North Mountain on the Annapolis side at Victoria Beach, we have Hepatica americana. I found out about that in sort of a roundabout way when I was talking about Mayflowers, and this lady said, well, she didn't have Mayflowers, she had Hepaticas, and in Victoria Beach. So I had to check that out. And sure enough, the population is dwindling, and I don't know just how it is now. But anyway, the owner took me up to see it, and here he is. This is later on. We went up to see it, and I had a bandage around my knee and he was holding on to me, make sure I didn't fall down the mountain. And here you have in the background, you have Joe Johnson. You probably mostly know Joe. He's a great um, botanist and has written a very important book on the plants of the Bruce Peninsula in Ontario. And the same place, we found Canopolis americana, the cancer root. It was the last year's flower stalks, and Lisa found a fresh one. I've never found it in the fresh state. Oh, of course, Jeff, you would find it. I'm going to tag along with you from now on. Thank you, Jeff. And downy yellow violet. This we found in Granville Ferry. Ruth Newell was responsible for identifying this. I just went by it, said, well, that's a violet. And she said, oh, but look at the stem. She said, that might be Canada violet. We'll have to come back and check that out because this was in August, I think, that we were there. So the next year she took her GPS waypoint and I took a point where I could go with my compass. So we went from the bend in the brook, I with my compass and her with her GPS, and we zeroed in on it. And there was just the most wonderful population there over what we figure about 300 feet of floodplain, and it was just full of them. And so that was a great day. Then we come up, no, I guess we'd have to go back down on Granville side, just near the habitation, there's a road goes over to the mountain from the Granville Road. It's called the Hollow Mountain Road. And I discovered this wonderful bog that I could actually drive to. And so I spent a lot of time there. And I found this rose begonia there. And this slender, what? Cotton grass. Yeah. Yeah. And so I got a specimen and sent it in, and it was recorded and confirmed. Yes, and this is you see my flora, and there's the number letter C is the Aerioforum gracile, and I have pointed on that it was rare, and I found it. No, I was so pleased. And there's my specimen shown on the in the new flora, and there's my Ginny dot right there at the head of the Annapolis Basin. And now it hasn't been found too much by eye natters.
That was Sean Blaney's photo.
Sean, okay,
That's
good,
probably-
yeah. So, swamp milkweed. I was the first one that I know of to report it from Annapolis County. I didn't take a specimen, but that was on the Nictar River. And my son was working on the job there, making a new dam, and that got me in there where I couldn't get in again because it's gated. So I was glad that I was able to record that. And then we'll go further up into Kings County, and this is a place that I monitored probably for 10 years or more. And this was sort of midway through my monitoring years. And you can see the ATV trails there. And it was the plants that we found there were slightly, there we go. Yeah, the rock rose. And I found it and realized that it was rare. And so I started monitoring it. And over the years, I found as many as 400 plants. But the last time I was there, sadly, it's been really degraded. The four-wheeler tracks were okay. The plant survived and it was all right. But now we have the side-by-sides have gone in there and they've wrecked the place. There's no vegetation left on the upper part at all. And the lower part, the bank, they took a bush hog in, the Department of Highways, and they decimated all the greenery on the bank. So the day I was there was just a little tiny square about a square foot, and there were 9 rock rows, and that's all I could find in an hour of walking that trail. And the sand has been chewed up and thrown out, and the big roots from the pine trees adjacent to the trail are about 8 inches above the sand level. It's really a fright, and I'm really concerned about it. And Megan Crowley can take credit for those good pictures. And along with the that one was the golden heather, or Hudsonia. Hudsonia ericoides, and that's on the rare side too. And I found a few of those, but very few of those that same day. And so that sort of finishes my side of it, except I wanted to mention the figwort. When Lisa and I were in Tatamagouche before our group trip there, I found this plant, this figwort, along the side of the rail trail, and took a little piece of it. And on my way home, in my one of my field guides, I identified it as figwort, and then I found out it was rare. So when we went back with our field naturalist group there, no, our wild flora group, or was it the naturalist? Anyway, a lot of us were there together at Tatamagouche, and I got a larger specimen and was able to send it in. And this is a special little map that Alec Wilson drew for me, so I could get to see the showy lady slippers. And so I did get there to see them, and Lisa's going to take over from here and include it in her portion. Thanks for your attention and putting up with an old lady. Lisa, you can take her.
Is that chair,
Oh, you want my chair?
please?
fell.
Well, Mom is a hard act to follow, but I will give it my best. Yeah, so these are more of Jeff's beautiful photos of the showy lady slipper. And these yellow lady slippers were taken up around the just past Windsor in that beautiful little gypsum area off the highway. And a couple summers ago, I wanted to go and see the ram's head orchid that was there. And so Jeff was kind enough to give me some directions on how to find it. And I got there and I went, it was a hot day, and I went round in circles and wasn't able to find it. And so finally I texted Jeff and said, could you send me the coordinates? So he did, and I found it and was able to get this beautiful little shot of the ram's head orchid. And when we were starting to work on this, I realized that a lot of people have mentored me to become a citizen scientist. And Mom was my very first and my best mentor, and she's still my best friend. This was taken up at her camp a few years ago, and we've been on a lot of trips around Canada, and this was in the Yukon back in 2018. And that's when I decided to retire so I could do naturalist things full time. And when I used to work as an educational assistant and in an elementary school, and Brendan Caverhill was the first person that really talked to me about species at risk other than Mom. And he came to the school and gave a presentation about species at risk in Nova Scotia and left us with a challenge to create a project to help species at risk in the province. And I couldn't think of what to do. So I talked to Mom and she said, well, what about monarch butterflies? You could make a butterfly garden. And we did. And I was lucky enough to have a teacher who was took the project on wholeheartedly, and we created a big butterfly garden, and the kids did all the research and the planting, and we actually attracted monarchs the very first year. So it was really successful, and it became such a great teaching tool. We would have monarchs in all of the classrooms. We'd have caterpillars, and the kids would come running down the hall to tell us when they were going to do the pupa dance. And some of you may recognize that this is a male monarch by the little black spots on the hind wings. And so over the next 10 years or so, I became the monarch lady, butterfly lady of Lake LaRose is what Jonathan Riley called me in his article in the Digby Courier. And so I actually went to the Monarch Teachers Network workshop and learned how to um, raise monarchs indoors in a healthy way. And so I was able to get a lot of pictures of the life cycle of the monarch over the years. And I even worked with Monarch Watch from the University of Kansas and tagged some for a while. And Mom showed you how hard it was in the olden days to get specimens and record them. And I that's why I didn't become a naturalist, really, a citizen scientist until all this new technology came out to make it a lot easier. So I do use iNaturalist a lot, and the Merlin app, you can record birds. And also the Avenza app we use a lot as citizen scientists to record our tracks, and you can put pins where you find special things and go back and find them. And this is what Charlie wants to go see next week. This actually was on a trip with you, Charlie, a couple of years ago. We went to Balancing Rock, and this was my first skunk cabbage flowers, and that was a great day. And while Charlie was photographing something on this tree, I was running around looking for blue felt lichen because Jonathan Riley had found quite a few. He said, "Oh, it's real easy to find. It's just off the trail." And I looked and looked and was going in circles, literally. And I finally realized it was because the coordinates on iNaturalist were obscured. So I couldn't actually find the real tree, but I eventually did find this on the back of the tree where Charlie was photographing something else. And this is the blue felt lichen, which is the provincial lichen now. And Jeff White and Jonathan Riley and Ashley Viola, they're part of our citizen scientist group. And just before the pandemic hit, Jeff and Jonathan led a trip to Acacia Valley to teach us about the lichens that were there that had been nominated to become the provincial lichen, and because they wanted us to know what we were voting on. And that really got me hooked on lichens. And they had Francis's book and Troy's book on common lichens of northeastern North America. And so I got all excited and said, "Mom, I have to get that." So she bought me one for Christmas. And then the lockdown happened. So I spent the next couple of years just wandering around the woods near where I live, trying to, teach myself about the lichens. And then Francis gave a workshop on species at risk lichens out at the Last Hope camp near Beals Brook off the number 10 highway. And it was really great. And we learned about the black foam lichen and also the frosted glass whiskers. And then we went out searching for them. And lo and behold, I actually found a couple that first day, and which was pretty exciting. And the following week, Nina Newington, the president of Save Our Old Forests, called me and said, "Well, you seem to have a pretty good eye for these lichens. Would you like to come out and help us look this week?" And the rest is history. I've been looking for lichens ever since. And these are some of my favorite ones, the golden moon glow and fairy puke and yellow speckle belly. And this was the very first frosted glass whiskers that I ever found. And it was the first one that we found at Goldsmith Lake Wilderness Area, which we have been trying to convince the government that it should be protected. And so what we learned to look for is a tree with exposed heartwood, generally red maple or yellow birch, although one person did find it on a white birch, which was quite unusual. And I saw this, but I thought, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. I better get Frances to come and look. And she said, "Well, I think it is," but she had to take it home and look at it under the microscope to be sure that it was the frosted glass whiskers. And indeed it was. And so the frosted glass whiskers is a stubble lichen, which you can see here. This is a different type. And the more we looked, the more we found different ones, but we didn't really know too much about them. And then Jonathan Riley found an article by Dr. Steve Selva from the University of Maine. He's a retired professor, and he had written a research paper about the number of stubble lichens, the different species that you can find in a specific forest, give you an idea of the ecological continuity of a specific forest, because the older a forest gets, excuse me, the more, sorry, the more little microhabitats or nooks and crannies for all of these little tiny lichens. They're only a couple of millimeters high, and they need very special conditions to grow. And so these are a couple of different types that you see around. This is one of my favorites and grows on the tip-ups when a tree falls over, but it has to be down for quite a while for the decomposition of the wood and roots to start before they can get a hold. And Ashley Viola, she created this poster based on all of the stubble lichens that we found. And we actually invited Steve Selva to come up and teach us how to look for these stubbles. And he came and spent a few days with us. And when I talked to him afterwards about, wow, you really got up here in a hurry, and he said, well, Frances told me that it was an emergency. So we were glad that she had done that, and he came. And because again, we wanted to gather as much evidence as we could about the biodiversity in the Goldsmith Lake area. And his research shows that the older the forest, the more of these species that you can find. And so this poster is created to show early successional, early to mid successional, sorry, and the frosted glass whiskers is in the late successional, and you can see it here. Coral lichens are also a stubble lichen, and they are the only lichen that DNR considers when they are scoring for old forest. And we found a lot of coral lichens at Goldsmith Lake, but there's some controversy about which species they are. So Troy McMullen, Frances's co-author, is going to do some DNA testing on them this summer and try to determine which ones we have here and out there as well. And here we have Ann Mills. Do you have a peppermint? Sorry, I'm talking too fast. Mom and I first went with Ann Mills to Nunavut, to Bathurst Inlet, on the most amazing trip years ago. That was when I first met Ann. And she recommended this book on mosses and liverworts. And I wanted to learn about mosses. I had no idea what liverworts were. So I got this book, and here is this gorgeous picture, this plate of an old 1904 book by German biologist Ernst Haeckel. And I just thought they were so beautiful that I needed to start looking for them. And I started finding them. And this one I found up at Mom's camp, but I didn't know what it was. It just looked like a little green mat. So I brought a piece home on a piece of bark, and I grew it under my light garden in the basement. And lo and behold, it came up with these little fruiting bodies, which when I looked in Ralph Pope's book, it showed that this was Ptylidium pulcherrimum, because the other species, Ciliari, doesn't have the little fruiting bodies. So it was an interesting way to learn which one it was. This is another liverwort called snakewort, and I found this over on the North Mountain near Victoria Beach. And it's just such a beautiful looking plant. And this one up at Mom's camp on Fairbanks Lake, the lake has been dammed. And a few years ago, they were working on the dam, so they drained the whole lake, and all that was left was the brook in its original channel, which ran through a marsh way back when. So we were able to walk all the way out through there. And I found this interesting little plant and had no idea what it was. And through a lot of research and putting it on iNaturalist, discovered that it was fringed heartwort, Riciocarpos natans. And normally it's a floating aquatic. And but this one had, when it was down in the muck, it has a different growth habit. So that was pretty interesting. And here you can see this is where we found this one, and these are the only other iNaturalist observations. And this is a fun one that I learned from your book, Ralph's book. It's a bug on a stick, and it's an annual moss, and the leaves are actually microscopic. So this is really all you see is the fruiting body. And you can see here how tiny it is. And I just happened to be looking closely at this to see how many different mosses were growing in one spot. And I noticed this and was able to identify it from the moss book. And apparently it's an annual moss, and the fruiting bodies come up in the fall and then mature the following summer. So last summer, just before the woods were closed, I found some mature fruiting bodies, and they were all dried up because of the drought. And so I brought a few of them home and wet them, and this beautiful little fringed area opened up. And I learned just recently that they actually are quite common after a fire. So we will be going out looking for them around the Long Lake area. This is our northern purple pitcher plant, but it's the uncommon yellow version. We found this on Briar Island last summer. And Keith Ager is a mycologist. He's retired professor from University of Northern BC and moved to Nova Scotia a few years, about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And he's been very much involved with Save Our Old Forests, and he leads a lot of walks. He did a talk at our recent Soup Sunday about mushrooms that will grow after a fire. So that's some research we're going to be doing this summer to see what we can find out there. And this big orange one here is called the Eastern jack-o'-lantern mushroom. And it's huge, and it's actually a pathogen and grows on the roots of oak trees. And in the research I did, it said that once you see the mushrooms, it means that the oak is doomed. It will kill it, but I think it's going to take a long time. And the interesting thing about that is that they glow in the dark. And once I read that, I went back and asked the people who this grows in their front yard, could I take some home? And we put it on a piece of tin foil in the bedroom where it was nice and dark, and then waited until our eyes adjusted and you can actually see it glow. I tried taking pictures, but my cameras wouldn't pick up the glow, but I found this one on Wikipedia. That's pretty cool. And I've just gotten really interested in fungi and mushrooms, and these were some of the more beautiful ones. I had looked for this one for years before I finally found it up at Mom's camp. These turquoise elf cups. I couldn't believe when I saw pictures of them that they were real, and then to find out that they actually grew in Nova Scotia. But it took me a couple of years to find them, and you've probably all seen the green stained pieces of wood laying on the ground. Well, the next time you find it, that's the pigment of the mycelium of this particular fungus. It stains the wood that beautiful green and has been used in inset wood carvings over the years. But if you find a piece of that, pick the log up and turn it over where it's moist. You may find these beautiful cups on the underside. And this is a good friend of mine, Heywan Yi. She's a PhD student at the University of Manchester in UK. and also the co-artistic director of Blooming Ludus, which is a um, climate change play company, theater company, and they're based in the UK, Korea, South Korea, and Nova Scotia. And so she came for a year to do research for her thesis on the relationship between humans and fungi. And we became really good friends. And she was a big help to save our old forest. And she really wanted to learn as much as she could about lichens and fungi. And this is Crystal Vino, one of the board members of SUF. And so they wanted to go out and learn how to find the frosted glass whiskers. So we actually found some on the very first day that we went out, and you could see from their faces how excited they were to find that. Another one of my favorites are these little eyelash cups. And they're really hard to find because they're quite small. And I've only found them a few times, but they're just beautiful little eyelashes. Looks like they're winking at you. And you can see this old snag, and it looks like it's all rotting and black. And it's not very exciting, but that black is actually a lichen called Parmelia tryptophylla. And then growing on top of it is this beautiful little elf ears lichen. And so you can see this looks like a little tiny ear. And then here, this is the fruiting body. And some people like to call that the earwax of the elf ears. But it's really tiny. And I was so excited the first time I actually found it on my own. Now, this is a weird one. I don't know if you've ever heard of a zombie moth, but there are different types of fungi that will attack insects. And I'm not sure which one this is, possibly Acanthomyces, but Keith has sent off a piece of this for DNA testing. So we're uh, excited to see what it might be. But what happens that when the spores land on a moth, or sometimes there's different ones on ants or spiders, it actually starts to grow inside the body and causes the insect to climb up high in a tree or a bush. This one was on a small beech sapling. And then when it dies, the fruiting bodies come out and the spores get dispersed throughout the area. So the higher up the organism goes, the better dispersal rate. It's pretty wild. This was another new thing to me. These were salamander eggs, yellow spotted salamander eggs, and I was afraid that this they had died and an algae or something was eating it up. But it turns out that it's actually called salamander algae, and it does not hurt the salamander eggs. So it just turns them this pretty green color. And slime molds are quite interesting. And this one's a chocolate tube slime, and they tend to grow in a lot of different places on rotting wood. This is one of my favorites. It's called wolf's milk. And this is what it looks like when it's young. And if you poked one of those, it would ooze a little bit of peachy pink liquid. But as they mature, they turn brown. And then if you poke them, eventually they would have brown spores, uh, sort of like a puffball. And these were some other interesting little unknown fungi. This is another interesting type of fungus called hydnellum, or red juice tooth. And this is a form of guttation, which is something that they exude during their life process. No, even the mycologists don't really understand what that's all about. But this one is just amazing because it's so gorgeous. And this is one of the weirdest things that I've taken a liking to, and it's growing dung fungus. So I pick up deer poop out in the woods and incubate it again in my light garden, and just to see what will grow on it, what fungi grows on it. And this little one is called Pilobolus, and it's been very well studied because it's so interesting. When it starts off like these little tiny yellow tubes, and then they grow this little head, and have that little black spore cap on the top. And when the pressure inside builds enough, that spore cap gets thrown off up to 6 feet. The spores are sticky and they land on leaves or grasses, and then the next deer come along, eat them, and carry on and leave them somewhere else in the woods. So, what an ingenious dispersal method for your spores. And this particular one is called Pilobolus, and it's been called the fastest living organism in the world because of the rate that those spores fly. And this is an unknown dung fungus, or dungus, as I like to call them over here. And one of the most recent things that I've gotten interested in is using these audio moth um, recording units to record birds and now bats. You can set them to record a specific high frequency. And 90% of our bats were decimated by the white nose fungus. So I've been volunteering with MTRI, the Mersey Tobiatic Research Institute, and learning how to monitor for them. And they are starting to make a comeback. And Mom and I just bought some big nursery bat boxes to put up at her camp, where we found roosting bats. And we learned that each mother bat has only one pup, and they weigh 30% of their body weight when they're born. So that's a pretty big baby. And, and just to finish off, this is our latest species at risk map for Goldsmith Lake Wilderness area. So all of the work that we've all been doing together has resulted in finding all of these species at risk. The circles are the buffer zones for the protected species, and black ash gets 200 meters. The frosted glass whiskers gets 100 meters. The red areas are protected old growth. When we first started doing this, there were only a couple small ones here, and I think there was one, I don't know, down here somewhere. And so all of the rest we have found and reported to DNR, and they've sent someone out and decided, yeah, okay, they are really old growth and they do need to be protected. Our idea is, well, don't just protect those, that all of the green areas are proposed cut blocks, where West Forest still wants to come in and cut all around all of the protected areas, all of our protected lichens. And so we're still working really hard to stop them. And you can see we have found a number of species at risk birds as well. And I saw a pine marten, and DNR actually got a photograph of a pine marten over here. So it's been a lot of work, and if any of you ever want to come down and go to Goldsmith Lake looking for rare plants and lichens, just let us know. We'd love to show you around. Now, this is the end. When you've probably heard of the bog bodies that have been found around the world in peat bogs. Well, this is Mom's body, and she actually fell down in a wetland one
Bring
day.
it back in the
And
refrigerator.
it says Boggy here because that was actually her nickname when we were kids. My brothers gave her that nickname for some reason. Little did they know that she would end up spending most of her life running around bogs and falling in bogs. And
But when I came up, you notice the green spots on my hair and on my glasses and everything? That's duckweed. So I propose that this is a new way to monitor duckweed populations. What do you think? So anyway, that's the end of it. Probably everybody's fallen asleep by now.
I
We
think it
should
looks like a
this
new hair
into
product.
should have made this into two presentations. But I want to make sure to say thank you to Sean. He's probably left a while back, but I wanted to say thanks to Sean for sending me the copies of the my herbarium sheets that I used tonight, and hope to meet him someday. And thanks for everybody for sticking in with us here. We've been much longer than we should have, but anyway, good seeing you all. I hope I'll see some of you at the walk to look for the skunk cabbage. Night
Good,
now.
Gini and Lisa.
Good night.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much.
That was amazing. You guys really knocked it out of the park.
Thanks. We were pretty nervous.
And I got to say, there's way more to Nova Scotia than I ever realized. I mean, when I look at the depth of stuff you guys have poked around in over the years, it's really quite something. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Wonderful.
Thanks everyone for your patience.
Bye.
It was a wonderful talk. I
Thanks.
was with you every step of the way.
You were with us, a lot of them.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Things I didn't know about.
And I have to say, it gives me a real respect for the term citizen scientist too. And I look at particularly you, Ginny, what you went through to document all that stuff, and
That's right.
and I mean, it was truly the scientist. I mean, it's recorded for posterity in all these herbariums. That's great.
I didn't know the term at the time, but now I recognize myself.
Yeah. I'd call you a Citizen Ginny, like Citizen Kane. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know the area at all, so I was just looking at a Google map. Was this area affected by the wildfires at all?
Not far from where we are, yeah.
Oh, okay. So did that affect the any of the life, plants or animals or anything?
Well, yeah. It was a large fire area that was burned. I can't remember. I'm not sure how large it was, but it didn't get all the way to Goldsmith Lake Wilderness area, but it came pretty
Oh,
close.
okay.
Pretty close.
Mhm.
Lisa and Jenny, I don't know if I could ask you folks a question about future directions for your citizen science group, but I was wondering if maybe you could offer your experienced perspectives on something I've noticed, which feels like just a little strange about Nova Scotia's like broader kind of wildlife outreach and interests. That I kind of got myself into this situation this year through my job because I was participating in some landowner biodiversity assessments where I was talking to landowners about flying squirrels,
Mhm.
and ended up, unfortunately, now with a freezer full of cat-killed flying squirrel bodies. People just started talking to me as the flying squirrel guy. But something which I've always found really strange is that flying squirrels have there's so much focus on them where I grew up in the Southeast United States and just across the United States in general, especially the Southern United squirrel, or the Southern flying squirrel. And Nova Scotia is one of those areas where the Northern and Southern species mix.
Mhm.
And just based on the landowners I've spoken to, I know that the Sarah assessment for Southern flying squirrel really only shows observations in and around Kings County, kind of like central northern Nova Scotia. But everyone I've spoken to says that they've spotted Southern flying squirrels as far into the southwest as Shelburne County, and can generally back it up with these morbid little specimens. And I know that Southern flying squirrels there's a huge amount of body of research on how their populations are kind of very linearly related to how healthy a cut block system is and how well integrated a cut block system is, how badly balkanized a cut block system has become. So I was wondering, can you folks tell me why nobody in Nova Scotia knows anything about flying squirrels? It's just not on anyone's radar. No one talks about them. You know, they're such a big deal other places. It just is like a huge hole in knowledge here.
It's a good question. I know that there has been some research in the past, and from what I understand, DNA testing is the absolute way to know whether it's a northern or southern. Although I did hear Donna Crosland talk about parting their fur to see what the color was underneath, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. But I would say, just based on the problems we've had with other species at risk, is the lack of funding and the lack of sort of political will um, to put funding in looking after species at risk and research into them. I know when we were on I think it was the Lake Rosignol BioBlitz, there were some people from one of the universities who were trapping uh, the flying squirrels to determine which ones they were. But I never did hear what the results were.
Thank you, Lisa. And I guess I had a follow-up statement, but since you folks are Lake La Rose experts as well, I was wondering if you, speaking of glow-in-the-dark mushrooms, I was wondering if you folks had encountered late at night walking around Lake La Rose, like huge colonies of Pinellus stypticus, a foxfire mushroom that's all around Lake La Rose.
Yes, and I found that one a couple of times out at Goldsmith Lake. Didn't know what it was and photographed it, and then got home and uploaded it to iNaturalist and found out that it was a glow in the dark one. I had no idea. So then I started, really looking for it. And in the last year or so, I think it's been too dry. I haven't found it. But prior to that, it grows on dead twigs laying on the ground, and yeah, it's a really cool one.
Yeah, I got some really cool photos specifically from Lake La Rose of
Oh,
foxfire. So I'm really trying to get you two to give us a little photo tour of glow-in-the-dark mushrooms out there so we can all get some good photos. But,
Around the
I
map.
won't hit too hard.
yes. What did you use to photograph it?
I actually have just a tiny little film camera that lets me take nice stabilized long exposures.
Oh, okay.
And then when I get the film developed, I generally develop it myself. So I have the opportunity to manage my exposure so I don't blow out everything. But
all right.
I think Charlie probably has some digital cameras that could do the same thing with a minute.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll have to get him on the job then. Thank you.
You mentioned that bats are making a comeback.
Yes.
We used to have bats skimming on the lake where I live, but they all disappeared during the white nose epidemic. Are they generally coming back or only in certain areas?
That's a good question. I think the Lori Finney, she's the bat lady at MTRI, and her work is based in Southwest Nova Scotia. So she did her thesis on this area. So I don't know about the rest of the province, but what they're focused on is trying to find historical places where there were bat colonies, in particular the nursery colonies. The males just hang out on their own, but the females like to get together in, especially the little brown bats, in usually buildings or along the edges, like if there are big enough trees that they can roost in. So she said that's how they will keep them going forward. So we did some work out at a church where they had been a nuisance for quite a few years and then disappeared, and now they've come back there. So we went out and did a bat survey and counted 46 bats coming out, at night. And so we're trying to hopefully get them to put up some bat houses, and they had to wait until the bats left before they actually tried to close off the church so they can't get back in because they are protected now. They would need a permit if they were going to try to remove them before November, which is when they leave to hibernate.
Yes, I haven't seen any ever since we lost them during during that time of the disease.
Right.
And I was wondering if it was worthwhile putting up bat houses, but maybe not until we actually start seeing some signs of life?
Well, if you actually had them before, it would be worthwhile to put them up. It's no guarantee, but at least it would give them some habitat if they did show up in your area.
Going back to the flying squirrels, I live in Bedford, right in the middle of old Bedford. Over the last, say, 8 years, I've had at least 5 episodes of a midnight visitor trying to get in through my soffit. Considering how quickly it starts and how quickly it leaves after I bang on the wall or open the window, I'm pretty sure that that's a flying squirrel looking for a nesting place.
It could be.
I hope you manage to leave your place closed up so we can't get back in. I
Well,
had regular squirrels in my house once, and they were hard to get rid of.
Well,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that he might have chewed through a birdhouse that I have up on the tree somewhere to accept that. But it happens between 11:30 and 1:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden there'll be this noise in the corner of my house where the soffit comes to the corner. So it can't be a raccoon because it comes and it goes so fast.
Too fast. Yeah. Good luck with that.
I just get up and bang on the wall until he leaves.
Goes away. Good. I'm seeing all the nice reports here. Thank you for your good words. And I wanted to make sure that I thanked Sean, and he may have left the scene now, but Sean Hoy and
I'm still here.
Oh, you're
You're
there.
you're
Good. Thank
most
you.
welcome,
Thank
Jeannie.
you, Sean, for sharing those herbarium sheets with me.
Happy
They
to help.
helped make the program help. Good. Yeah.
Oh, and I see that someone has asked where Goldsmith Lake is. It's off the West Dalhousie Road between there and the number 201 highway in Bridgetown. It's a beautiful, pristine lake that's never been dammed. There's no cottages on it, and it's really a beautiful spot to go and visit if you want to do some paddling. There's lots of islands, and you can actually walk to the old growth areas or paddle to them in 15, 20 minutes. So it's a really beautiful place.
Well, we've gone way over time. I hope we haven't put everyone to sleep. I see a few people that are still with their eyes open. Thanks so much for staying with us all this time, and hopefully we'll see some of you down at the Balancing Rock Trail soon.
Well, thank you both.
Weather permitting.
Yeah,
Thanks.
been a real treat.
Night.
Okay. Night. I'm gonna sign off now unless anyone else has anything they need to say.
No, but I just decided that I needed to branch out. Not just deal with mosses and liverworts.
Lots of fun to be had out there, Anne.
Expand my horizons.
Yeah, and I'm just noticing in the comments that someone said that Matt Smith at Kedgie is a flying squirrel expert. And
Isn't there somebody and I can't think of his name. I should, because I've met him and I've talked to him and watched him work and so on. And he's at jeepers, I can't think. Anyway, he's worked with owls and also with flying squirrels, and we were up in his area when he was looking for. He had a nest, a block nest on a tree, and he climbed his ladder, special ladder, and out came a flying squirrel, and it landed on a sloping dead tree, ran down there and then flew, putting the skins up, and then climbed a tree that was a little way but it had been wakened up because this was broad daylight and they tend to hold up by that time. That was very exciting. And the only other time, and I won't hold this, but I was awake about 3 a.m. and I heard plunk on the roof, and then ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. and then another little spring, I guess. And Eric and I decided that that was a flying squirrel on our roofs. And that's the only time I've ever heard anything around here. But I wouldn't be surprised. I really not, because we have a messy old forest that has all sorts of things in it that, in mosses and lichens and liverworts and today, it must have happened overnight. The tracks of river otter came through our place,
Wow.
probably from Rose Bay, crossed the Kingsburg Road, up through the woods, cross our little driveway, and down into the pond.
They
And there
really
were several places where you could see the marks of the belly
Mhm.
across the road and down the lane. It was I was exciting because that's
Yeah.
the only time I've seen them there for a couple of years. But
Mhm.
otherwise, they do come by.
Right.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing that, Anne. That
Yeah.
was nice.
well, thanks. It was just it's always a thrill to see them. And I have some photographs of the belly pattern as they move themselves along. Anyway, great talk. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm signing off. Good night.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.